angel wings, I told the devil that
Let me ask you a question. What did India's defense exports, procurement, and manufacturing look like before 2014? The quick answer? Not good. India was one of the world's largest arms importers, relying on foreign suppliers for up to 70% of its defense needs. The local industry, especially government-run public sector undertakings, consistently failed to deliver major platforms, either on time or at all. Indigenous projects like the Arjun tank, LCA Tejas, and INSA's rifles were plagued with decades of delays and performance issues. Most of the production and research and development were monopolized by inefficient state-run enterprises. The Ordnance Factory Board, with its outdated systems, had a notorious record of producing poor-quality ammunition and obsolete weapons. Hindustan Aeronautics Limited held a monopoly over aircraft production, leading to delays and limited innovation. Meanwhile, the old defense procurement procedure was infamous for being slow, overly cautious, and riddled with corruption. Scandals like the Bofors case from the 1980s still cast a shadow over decision-making. This created what's often called a decision paralysis inside the Ministry of Defense. Officials were so afraid of scrutiny that they delayed or canceled tenders altogether, even when the military urgently needed new equipment. Private players were essentially locked out. Even capable Indian companies like Tata, L&T, Mahindra Defence, and Bharat Forge were sidelined in favor of inefficient PSUs, thanks to restrictive policies and bureaucratic red tape. Investment in defense research and development was shockingly low. DRDO operated in isolation, with barely any collaboration with private industry or academia. Many of their projects were delayed for years or quietly shelved. India couldn't even produce a reliable indigenous assault rifle. Before 2014, India's defense exports were almost non-existent, hovering around $100 million to $200 million per year. Despite being a major military power, India wasn't seen as a defense exporter. In contrast, much smaller nations like Israel or South Korea were miles ahead. No significant new artillery system had been inducted since the Bofors scandal, for nearly 30 years. The Navy's submarine fleet was shrinking without timely replacements. The Army lacked modern rifles, bulletproof gear, and night fighting capability. The Air Force was flying outdated jets with poor safety records, and some of those problems still persist today. In short, India was a sleeping giant, crippled by red tape, outdated doctrines, import dependency, and systemic inefficiency. 10 years later, India's defense sector isn't just different, it's unrecognizable. Let me show you some examples that will hopefully give you an idea of the impressive strides India has made. Before 2014, India's missile and air defense capabilities were lagging behind. The country relied heavily on imported systems for even basic air defense needs. Indigenous efforts were often delayed or stuck in testing phases for years. The Akash missile faced repeated delays and wasn't considered reliable enough to form a solid air defense shield. India lacked short-range quick-reaction systems, and there was no serious progress on a ballistic missile defense shield. Most of the air defense inventory was based on aging Soviet-era systems like 9K-33 OSA, Pecker systems, and Kvadrat, some of which dated back to the 1970s and 80s. The concept of loitering munitions, or indigenous manpads, barely existed in operational terms. While ballistic missile development was ongoing, the deployment of Agni systems was slow and limited. In short, India's air defense grid was patchy, outdated, and vulnerable. Cut to today, and the transformation is nothing short of remarkable. Next-gen Akash missile defense systems and QRSAMs are now strengthening India's layered air defense. The Indigenous Ballistic Missile Defense Program, Phase 1 is operational. Phase 2 is already underway. Astra BVR missiles are being integrated across fighter fleets. The Mark II variant is expected to be inducted next year with frontline jets. Surface-to-surface missiles like Pralay, Shaurya, and Prahar give the Army quick-strike capabilities. India demonstrated anti-satellite capability in 2019, joining an elite group of space-capable military powers. Indigenous loitering munitions like Nagastra-1 and other kamikaze drones are in development, many by private Indian startups. Indigenous manpads are now tested and moving toward induction. DRDO has successfully tested a hypersonic missile, with various versions already under development. Ballistic missiles like the Agni series, including Agni 5 with MIRV capability, represent a significant leap in strategic deterrence. Before 2014, artillery modernization had already stagnated for decades, and the Bofors scandal of the 1980s only cast a longer shadow over the sector. Indigenous projects like the Dhanush gun or the upgraded Pinaka system were still in testing or very limited use. India had no true combat UAVs, and surveillance capabilities were rudimentary at best. Electronic warfare was reliant on imported tech, and radar systems were patchy, with most ESA radar work in the early R&D stage. Attack helicopters were limited to imported platforms like the Mi-35. Direct energy weapons were not even on the drawing board. Innovation from the private sector was almost non-existent, startups were nowhere near defense, and DRDO was overburdened. Co-development with foreign giants was rare, and foreign firms saw India mostly as a buyer, not a builder. Now, the landscape has transformed dramatically. Indigenous systems like Pinaka MBRL and Advanced Towed Artillery Gun System are redefining India's firepower. The Dhanush 155mm towed artillery gun is now operational. The Pinaka system, once stuck in testing, is now being exported. Armenia has already inducted it, and France and Spain have shown interest in acquiring it as well. Uttom ESA radar is integrated with Tejas, with a more powerful Mark II for Su-30s on the way. Indigenous combat UAVs like Tapas are now undergoing trials. Counter-drone systems, such as DRDO's D4, address emerging low-cost aerial threats. India is working on directed energy weapons under DRDO's Adifir program, with prototypes in development. The Indigenous Light Combat Helicopter, designed for high-altitude warfare, received its biggest ever order for induction into the Indian Army, a major boost for homegrown aviation and combat capability. The Advanced Light Helicopter continues to serve across the Army, Navy, and Air Force with increasing Indigenous content. Through initiatives like IDX and Make2, over 150 startups are developing new-age defense technologies, AI-powered drones, loitering munitions, autonomous boats, and space-based defense systems, a scene unimaginable just a decade ago. Yes, India still imports defense technology, but it's not just doing that. It's also co-developing and producing it. General Electric F-414 jet engines will be made in India, powering future fighter jets. AK-203 assault rifles are being made in Amethi under a joint venture with Kalashnikov. A C-295 transport aircraft production line is being set up with Airbus. Boeing and Lockheed Martin now manufacture critical parts in India, not just for India, but for their global supply chains. The Ordnance Factory Board was dismantled in 2021 and replaced by 7 specialized defense PSUs. Hindustan Aeronautics Limited has been pushed to compete, with private players like Tata and L&T contributing to projects like Tejas. Major projects like K9 Vidra, Pinaka, BrahMos are now developed in partnership with the private sector, creating a more dynamic and competitive defense ecosystem. Indigenous electronic warfare systems like Shakti for the Navy and Samyukta and Himshakti for the Army have been deployed. Cutting-edge radars such as Rajendra, Ashwini, Arudra, and airborne early warning systems are bolstering air defense. Indian-designed sonars like Ashus and Panchandriya enhance undersea warfare capabilities. India has joined the elite group of nations with space-based surveillance, using satellites like riddled and GS-80 for real-time intelligence. The Indigenous aircraft carrier INS Vikrant has been commissioned, and IAC-2, the next-generation carrier, is already in the planning and design phase. What sets IAC-2 apart is its ambition to integrate cutting-edge indigenous technologies like electromagnetic aircraft launch systems, a capability only the most advanced navies possess. The DRDO's research and development establishment has already made promising progress. It has built a scaled demonstrator capable of launching 400 kilograms payloads over just 16 to 18 meters, a remarkable achievement for India's first MALS trials. The next step is scaling up this tech to develop a full-scale MALS for future Indian aircraft carriers, paving the way for launching heavier fighter jets without the need for ski jump ramps. On the undersea front, nuclear submarines like Arihant and Aragat are already operational, with more SSBNs and SSNs under construction to bolster India's nuclear triad. Advanced warships such as INS Visakhapatnam under Project 15B and stealth frigates under Project 17A are joining the fleet, showcasing India's ability to design and build high-end naval platforms. The Army, too, is gearing up for high-altitude scenarios with the indigenous Zorawar light tank, purpose-built for mountainous terrain and border conflicts. What makes it even more remarkable is the speed of development. Zorawar was reportedly designed and built in less than 24 months, a rare feat in armored vehicle programs. It's specifically meant for operations in the challenging high-altitude regions of Ladakh and Sikkim, where mobility and rapid deployment are critical. And these are just a few highlights in what has become a sweeping wave of modernization. India's defense exports, once barely a blip on the radar, are now making waves around the world. Even China took note. A Chinese military analyst recently acknowledged India's rising stature as a global arms exporter. Defense exports have surged to a record high of $2.76 billion. Key clients include the US, France, Armenia, and the Philippines. Private firms contributed approximately $1.8 billion, accounting for about 64% of total defense exports. Defense PSUs also saw a 42.85% rise in exports, reaching around $980 million in FY 2024 and 25. After the $375 million deal with the Philippines for BrahMos, India is now in talks with over 12 other nations. India has also made significant strides in exporting essential protective gear. It is the fourth country, after the US, UK, and Germany, to establish national standards for vests offering full 360-degree protection. Bulletproof jackets and military boots made to Bureau of Indian Standards specifications are now being shipped to over 100 countries, including several in Europe. Yes, challenges remain, especially in areas like fighter aircraft production and indigenous jet engines, but these are long-term battles. And if the last 10 years are any indication, India is not only up for the challenge, it's building momentum.